Again, that was the Prime Minister speaking yesterday. But for more on what he was discussing there, let's bring in retired General Tom Lawson. He's a former Chief of the Defence Staff for the Canadian Armed Forces. General Lawson, thank you for making time for us.
Glad to be here with you.
Okay, so you heard Prime Minister Mark Carney there. He's hopeful that Canada will be able to sign on to a major European defence rearmament plan by July 1st, Canada Day. What do you make of that?
Well, it's rapid movement, certainly, and the Europeans, I think we should recognize, have been shaken, of course, by the aggressive stance of the American leadership regarding Europe and their involvement in NATO. And I think they see with this weakening of the Atlantic portion of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization alliance that they better get things together. So it was back in March they started talking about this rearm, the European Union thing, and it involves up to $1.25 trillion of defense spending over the next 5 years. So Canada feeling much the same way. I think the Prime Minister saw an opportunity here to strategically perhaps start realigning defense investment with European suppliers, but also to signal to the United States that Canada doesn't appreciate how we're being treated in recent months, and therefore we have options too.
What do you make of the timeline when we hear from the Prime Minister that he's looking to join this major European military buildup by Canada Day?
Well, that's rapid. And I think probably what can be done by Canada in that time is very limited. But I think a door that's ajar regarding Rearm Europe to Canada can be pushed open a little wider. Canadian bureaucrats and political representatives can go over there and see what's in the art of the possible. What can Canadian industry supply to defense industries over there that will be feeding some of these countries, and how much of Canadian defense procurement can actually be shifted from our traditional focus on defense industry, American defense industry, to European and perhaps even Asian Pacific industry like South Korea, which Rearm Europe may also be looking at.
You know, when we talk about also the demands that are coming from the United States, certainly for Canada to reassess its security systems here and military systems of this country, but also the demands that the U.S. president has put on NATO. Now we're hearing that the NATO Secretary General has said he expects NATO to approve new defense spending threshold of 5% of GDP. And that is something that we had heard from U.S. officials. Right now, as it stands, Canada is spending about 1.37% of GDP. That's short of the 2% that was a requirement prior to this new announcement. Are you optimistic that we have the capability to even reach that goal? It was something that the Prime Minister had mentioned before as something to hit in 2030 as a target.
Arthi, what I'm really optimistic about is for the first time in a long time, we've got a Prime Minister who seems to be preparing Canadian for significant new investments in defense. And that's been required for so very long time. When I was CDS 10 years ago, our bases, our wings, our ports were already shabby and degrading. 10 years later, we've done very little to upgrade that. We're short by 10,000 regulars. We need to make sure that we're encouraging retention on our members that we've got. And we've got to convince young Canadians that these are good careers. And then we've got to upgrade a lot of equipment that is not even really all that viable anymore. Our fighters and our frigates aren't really viable for wartime conditions. So that alone, without any fanfare, new developments, will take us to probably somewhere around 2% of gross domestic product. When we talk about going beyond that, again, I think we're talking now about brand new systems. The Prime Minister has talked about perhaps the purchase of submarines, new investment in NORAD and air defense systems, a lot of systems that have been required for growth of the Canadian military that could take us well below 2%. But what I'm optimistic about is that this Prime Minister, on his first days, his first months, but recent days, is talking about defense in a way our prime ministers and elected officials have not been talking about for a long time.
Let's talk finally a little bit about the Golden Dome, because that is certainly something that has come up multiple times when it comes to security and how it works between the U.S. and Canada. And the U.S. president really doubled down on that 51st state rhetoric yesterday in a post on social media. He said his administration is negotiating with Canada about joining that Golden Dome missile defense system, saying it will cost $61 billion if we remain a separate nation, but zero if we join the United States. So, when we take a look at that, the conversations we've heard from the Prime Minister are happening about the Golden Dome, about how to cooperate with the United States when it comes to security in this country, securing Canada's north. But what steps does Canada need to take in order to reduce its dependence on the United States?
Well, there are so many questions to be answered here. First of all, is the technology even available right now to provide some sort of dome that protects North America? But before we even get to really important questions like that one and what happens to the decades of mutually assured destruction between peer competitors when that goes away, before we get there, I think it's really smart that our elected officials don't slam the door on this. Anything that can increase the defense and security of North America with our partners in NORAD, we should be at the table to discuss. This $60 billion that it will cost Canadians, all of that is open for discussion in coming months and years. I think more importantly, our elected officials and bureaucrats should be down in Washington behind those closed doors talking about what American leadership is actually trying to do and what role Canada can play in that. Then, there's time to discuss, various treaties that have been signed against the weaponization of space and things like that. We need to be there so we can influence how this thing rolls out, if indeed it does roll out.
There will be many more questions, and hopefully we'll be able to have more conversations with you. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Retired General Tom Lawson is a former Chief of the Defence Staff for the Canadian Armed Forces.